What if the moment you stopped being available for everyone was the exact moment your life finally began to change? What if the respect you've been chasing has never been earned by giving more of yourself, but by learning when to stop giving? Most people believe that always being there makes them valuable. But in reality, constantly making yourself available often teaches others to take your presence for granted, while slowly causing you to forget your own worth. Many people spend their lives trying to be everything for everyone. They answer every message immediately, accept every invitation, solve every problem, and sacrifice their own priorities just to avoid disappointing others. At first, this feels generous. It feels kind. It even feels responsible. But beneath that generosity there is often a quiet fear, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of no longer being needed. Without realizing it, they begin measuring their value by how useful they are to other people. Their schedule belongs to everyone except themselves. Their energy is constantly divided. Their peace is interrupted by every demand that appears before them. Slowly, they stop asking what they truly want because they have become too busy living according to everyone else's expectations. This is where self-respect quietly begins to disappear. When your time is available to everyone, your own priorities become negotiable. Your dreams are postponed, your health is ignored, your personal growth is delayed. You convince yourself that one more sacrifice will finally make people appreciate you. Yet appreciation built on constant availability is fragile. The more you always say yes, the more your presence becomes expected instead of valued. Think about a river that gives away all of its water without ever being replenished. At first, it appears endless, but eventually, it begins to run dry. The same happens to the human spirit. You cannot continuously pour into everyone else's life while neglecting your own and expect to remain strong. Real generosity begins with inner strength, and inner strength requires protecting your own time, energy, and attention. This does not mean becoming cold or selfish. It does not mean ignoring people who genuinely care about you. It means understanding that your life also deserves your commitment. Every hour you give away without intention is an hour taken from the future you claim to desire. Many people mistake availability and your confidence begins growing because you finally keep the promises you make to yourself. You no longer feel guilty for protecting your peace. You no longer apologize for having standards. You no longer believe that your worth depends on being constantly available. That is the first step toward real freedom, because the strongest people are not those who are always within reach. They are the ones whose lives are guided by purpose instead of endless obligation. And once you reclaim your own time and attention, you begin to discover why healthy distance changes the way people see both you and themselves. Once you stop making yourself endlessly available, something unexpected begins to happen. The world around you does not necessarily change overnight, but the way people respond to you often does. This is not because you have become more important simply by creating distance. It is because human psychology naturally notices what is meaningful, intentional, and not endlessly accessible. Most people never question why they value certain things more than others. They protect what is limited. They appreciate what requires effort. They pay closer attention to what cannot be taken for granted. This pattern appears in many areas of life, including relationships. When your time and attention are available at every moment, people can slowly begin treating them as something ordinary instead of something valuable. This is not a sign that people are cruel. It is often a reflection of human nature. Familiarity can sometimes create comfort, but when there are no boundaries, it can also create complacency. If someone knows you will always cancel your own plans for them, always answer immediately, and always put their needs ahead of your own, they may gradually stop recognizing the quiet sacrifices you continue making, not because your sacrifices have no value, but because they have become expected. Expectation quietly replaces appreciation. This is why boundaries are so important. Boundaries are not walls designed to push people away. They are guidelines that teach others how to respect your time, your energy, and your priorities. They communicate that your life has purpose beyond meeting every request placed before you. There is a dangerous misunderstanding about becoming less available. Some people believe it means intentionally ignoring messages, creating emotional distance, or making others chase them. But that is not confidence. That is manipulation disguised as mystery. Real confidence has no interest in playing games. A purposeful person is not difficult to reach because they want attention. They are less available because they are deeply invested in building something meaningful. When your days become filled with learning, creating, improving your health, strengthening your character, and pursuing your goals, availability naturally changes. You are no longer constantly searching for distractions because your own life has become worthy of your attention. Ironically, this often causes people to value your presence more, not because you are trying to appear important, but because your attention has become intentional rather than automatic. Every conversation carries greater meaning because it is given freely, not out of obligation or fear of rejection. Think about the people you genuinely admire. They are rarely respected because they are available every second of the day. They are respected because when they give their attention, it feels sincere, focused, and meaningful. Their presence carries weight because it is never careless. The lesson is not to become emotionally distant. The lesson is to become emotionally intentional. Choose relationships where respect flows both ways. Invest your energy where it is appreciated, not merely expected. Protect your time without becoming arrogant. Care for others without abandoning yourself. When you stop treating your own life as something that can always wait, other people begin seeing that your priorities matter too. More importantly, you begin seeing it yourself. That is where lasting confidence begins. Not in making yourself rare for the sake of attention, but in making your life meaningful enough that your time naturally becomes valuable. And when your time is no longer given away without purpose, your absence begins revealing something even more important: the true intentions of the people around you. When you stop being available all the time, you begin to witness something that constant presence often hides. Distance has a remarkable way of revealing the truth. As long as you are always there, always helping, always answering, and always sacrificing your own time, it can be difficult to see who truly values you and who simply values what you provide. Many relationships survive because one person keeps giving while the other keeps receiving. As long as that pattern continues, everything appears peaceful. But the moment you step back to protect your own time and energy, hidden expectations begin to surface. Some people respond with understanding, others respond with disappointment, and a few respond with anger. The reaction itself often tells you more than any explanation ever could. A person who genuinely respects you understands that you have your own responsibilities, goals, and personal life. They do not demand constant access to your attention because they recognize that your time is valuable, just as theirs is. They may miss your presence, but they will never punish you for having healthy boundaries. On the other hand, there are people who become uncomfortable the moment they realize they can no longer control your availability. They question your decisions, accuse you of changing, or make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. Not because you have done something wrong, but because your boundaries have interrupted a pattern they had grown comfortable with. This is why distance is often revealing. It removes the habits that once covered the truth. Imagine a tree standing in the middle of a storm. The wind does not create weak branches. It simply exposes which branches were already fragile. Relationships work in much the same way. A little distance does not create disrespect. It reveals whether respect was truly there from the beginning. That realization can be painful. You may discover that some people appreciated your usefulness more than your presence. They enjoyed your availability more than your company. As long as you solved their problems, listened to every complaint, and placed their needs above your own, everything felt balanced. But when you began respecting your own time, the relationship suddenly changed. Do not confuse this with becoming suspicious of everyone around you. Not every disagreement means someone has bad intentions. Good relationships require communication, patience, and understanding. Sometimes people simply need time to adjust to healthier boundaries. The goal is not to test people. The goal is to understand them. Healthy relationships become stronger when both people respect each other's individuality. They encourage growth instead of demanding constant attention. They celebrate your progress instead of feeling threatened by it. They understand that love, friendship, and respect do not require unlimited availability. Perhaps the most important truth is this: stepping back also reveals something about yourself. You begin noticing how often you confused being needed with being valued. You realize that constantly rescuing others sometimes prevented you from building your own life. The distance does not only expose other people's intentions, it exposes your own habits. That awareness is where transformation begins. You stop chasing relationships built on obligation and begin investing in relationships built on mutual respect. You no longer fear disappointing people simply because you chose your own priorities. Instead, you understand that the people who truly belong in your life will respect the boundaries that protect your peace. And once you clearly see who deserves your time, your next responsibility becomes even greater, to build a life so meaningful that your greatest commitment is no longer pleasing others, but fulfilling your own purpose. As you begin to understand who truly respects your boundaries, another question naturally appears. If you are no longer living to meet everyone else's expectations, then what should your life revolve around? This is where many people become confused. They believe becoming less available means simply spending less time with others. But reducing your availability without increasing your purpose only creates emptiness. The goal is not to disappear. The goal is to build a life so meaningful that your time naturally becomes valuable. Many people spend years making themselves busy without ever becoming productive. Their days are filled with endless conversations, unnecessary obligations, and constant distractions. Yet when they look back, they realize very little has actually changed. They have been occupied but not progressing. There is an important difference. Being busy consumes time. Having purpose transforms time. A man who has no clear direction often looks for significance in other people's lives because he has not yet created enough meaning in his own. He waits for messages to feel important. He depends on invitations to feel included. He seeks attention because his own life does not yet hold his full attention. But when you begin building something meaningful, everything changes. Your mornings become intentional. Your decisions become clearer. Your priorities become stronger. You no longer wake up asking, "Who needs me today?" Instead, you ask, "What kind of man am I becoming today?" That single change in perspective transforms your entire life. Imagine an archer aiming at a distant target. If his eyes constantly wander toward every movement around him, his arrow will never reach its destination. Only complete focus allows him to strike the mark. Your purpose works the same way. Every unnecessary distraction pulls your attention away from the life you claim to desire. This is why focused people often appear less available, not because they dislike others, not because they believe they are superior, but because they have accepted that every meaningful achievement demands concentrated effort. A strong body is built through consistent training. A disciplined mind is built through continuous learning. A meaningful career is built through persistent work. A respected character is built through daily integrity. None of these things grow by accident. They require time. They require sacrifice. They require saying no to what is merely urgent so you can say yes to what is truly important. Many people fear missing out on what others are doing, but the greatest loss is not missing a social event or an unnecessary conversation. The greatest loss is missing the opportunity to become the person you were capable of becoming. Because you spent your life responding to everyone else's priorities, purpose creates a powerful form of freedom. When your life is guided by meaningful goals, you no longer feel guilty for protecting your schedule. You stop explaining every decision because your actions already have direction. You become comfortable spending time alone because solitude is no longer loneliness. It becomes the place where your future is built. This does not mean abandoning relationships. It means refusing to abandon yourself. The people who genuinely care about you will understand that your growth is not a rejection of them. In fact, the healthiest relationships are built between two people who each have a meaningful life of their own. They encourage each other to grow instead of demanding constant attention. Never confuse constant availability with love. Never confuse endless busyness with purpose. Build a life that excites you to wake up each morning. Fill your days with discipline, learning, meaningful work, and quiet progress. Let your actions speak louder than your availability. Because when your purpose becomes greater than your need to please others, your confidence no longer depends on who is calling your name. And once your life is built on purpose instead of people-pleasing, you discover the final lesson. Protecting your boundaries is not selfish. It is the foundation of lasting inner peace. As your life becomes guided by purpose instead of people-pleasing, one lesson becomes impossible to ignore. Every meaningful life is protected by boundaries. Without them, even the strongest person eventually becomes exhausted, distracted, and emotionally drained. Many people are afraid to say one simple word. No, not because they are incapable of saying it, but because they fear disappointing others. They worry that setting limits will make them selfish, distant, or uncaring. So they continue saying yes to requests they do not have time for, yes to responsibilities they never wanted, and yes to situations that slowly steal their peace. The problem is that every unnecessary yes is often a quiet no to yourself. You say no to your health. You say no to your goals. You say no to your growth. Healthy boundaries are not walls built to keep good people out. They are gates that allow the right people in while protecting your time, energy, and character. The people who genuinely respect you will also respect your boundaries. They may not always like them, but they will understand them. Those who become angry every time you protect your peace often reveal that they were benefiting from the absence of your boundaries. Never feel guilty for protecting what allows you to become your best self. You cannot pour endlessly into everyone else's life while leaving your own empty. Even the strongest mind needs time for reflection. Even the kindest heart needs rest. Even the most generous person must sometimes choose themselves, not out of selfishness, but out of wisdom. Remember, boundaries do not push love away, they protect it, because when you respect your own time, you teach others to respect it as well, and the peace you protect today becomes the foundation of the strength you carry tomorrow. The man who learns to say no to what weakens him is finally able to say yes to the life he was meant to live. In the end, everything changes not because you become harder to reach, but because you become harder to distract from the life that truly matters. Your value has never depended on making people chase you. It has always depended on the kind of person you become when no one is watching. There is a difference between being rare and pretending to be rare. One is built through character. The other is built through performance. Real confidence does not need to create mystery. It does not rely on emotional games or calculated distance. A man of character earns respect because his actions consistently reflect discipline, integrity, purpose, and self-respect. He speaks with honesty, keeps his promises, and refuses to compromise his values for temporary approval. People may admire his success, but what they truly respect is his consistency. When you stop being available for every distraction, every demand, and every opinion, you finally become available for your own growth. Your energy is invested in learning instead of comparing, creating instead of complaining, and building instead of seeking validation. That is where lasting confidence is born. Never measure your worth by how many people want your attention. Measure it by how faithfully you live according to your principles. The strongest presence is not created by absence alone. It is created by a life that reflects purpose, wisdom, and quiet strength. When your character becomes your greatest achievement, respect follows naturally. You no longer have to pursue it, because the greatest transformation begins the moment you stop trying to be available for everyone and start becoming fully committed to the person you are capable of becoming.